from Brazil's next superstar.
Endrick saute son corps avec
c'est bien fait.
Wow 79e minute et il est là, le but.
Je crois pas qu'Endrick soit en jeu. Il va aller défier Jonathan Fischer. Est-ce que c'est un doublé pour Endrick? Oui! Un face-à-face est toujours remporté par
The wonderkid Real Madrid spent millions to secure before anyone else.
He's very talented. He's very skillful to finish the plays in the shooting. So I would say that Endrick, I can affirm that he's phenomenal. He's a very talented player. And for sure that Real Madrid knows that. Every club in the world knows that. That's why he's ranking among these phenomena that we saw.
The future number 9 of Brazil. Goals for Palmeiras, goals for Brazil, goals whenever he gets a chance.
I don't know the English word. In Brazil we have a word, it's iluminado. It's, you know, when a lot of people are about to be born and God say, this is the one. He's amazing, always in the right place, and he wants to improve, he wants to learn. It's a monster.
And yet, no matter how well he plays, no matter how many goals he scores, no matter where he goes, Carlo Ancelotti always seems to have one answer. Not today. From Real Madrid to Brazil, Endrick keeps winning matches but losing the starting spot.
I'm legitimately fuming at the moment. This is just horrendous. This guy has not been given certain matches in a row, I would say 3, 4, 5 matches in a row to prove himself at Real Madrid, to prove what he can do at Real Madrid. This is horrendous. When he's banging in goals, he's playing excellently well for Lyon.
At this point, football fans are starting to ask a serious question. Is Endrick actually doing something wrong? Or does he simply have a Carlo Ancelotti problem?
What the hell were you thinking? Why didn't Endrick play this match? Does Carlo Ancelotti have a personal issue with Endrick?
December 2022, when Endrick was just 16 years old, Real Madrid decided to take a huge gamble by signing a 60 million euros agreement with Palmeiras, including 35 million euros in fixed fees and 25 million euros in add-ons. Including another 12 million euros in taxes, the total amount reached 72 million euros for a boy who was not even old enough for an international transfer. This massive investment was completely justified, as Real Madrid expect him to become the next golden boy of the Bernabeu, while the Brazilian media even compare him to the legendary Ronaldo, the phenomenon.
Mas ele tá ali é porque ele tem talento, porque ele demonstrou que merece estar lá. Portanto, eu acredito muito nele, desejo toda a sorte do mundo para que ele tenha a tranquilidade de, nos momentos certos, tomar as melhores decisões.
Those expectations were finally put to the test in July 2024 when Endrick turned 18 and officially arrived in Madrid. From his very first runs in the new jersey, he proved that nobody had waited in vain. Coming on in the 86th minute of his La Liga debut against Valladolid, the Brazilian wonderkid needed just 10 minutes to score his first goal. Riding the momentum from that brilliant debut, a few months later, he once again played the hero by scoring the decisive goal in the first leg of the Copa del Rey semi-final against Real Sociedad. Witnessing the dazzling form of his young pupil, manager Carlo Ancelotti did not hold back in his praise and called him a spectacular player.
Lo que veo yo es que tiene algo especial. Es muy rápido, muy potente en espacio reducido, es capaz de llegar a la velocidad máxima en muy poco espacio. Es muy hábil en el desmarque. Estas son todas calidades que él tiene. Creo que en este sentido es un talento, es un gran talento, porque es bastante raro ver un jugador con este tipo de características.
At the moment, when everything seemed to be going according to plan and a bright future was opening up at the Bernabeu, that was also when an unexpected turning point began to emerge. That turning point did not actually come from Endrick himself, because his problem had never been talent, but rather a fierce competition named Kylian Mbappé. A French superstar's arrival at Real Madrid that very year completed an ultimate attacking trio alongside Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo. These three world-class names almost never left the pitch, putting the Brazilian wonderkid in an incredibly difficult situation. Despite training very well and always scoring whenever he had the opportunity, he still found himself behind both Brahim Diaz and Arda Güler in the coaching staff's pecking order.
That's what I'm a little bit disappointed at. In La Liga, 0 starts, Champions League 1 start. But even that isn't totally shocking, though. I would have liked to see him get mixed in rotation earlier in the season to bring him along so that he's ready to be a big factor this time of the season, particularly coming off the bench. Of his substitute appearances, one of them in La Liga was more than 10 or 11 minutes. That's not enough from Carlo Ancelotti for this player.
The inevitable consequences of being at the back of the line were clearly reflected in the statistics of the 2024-25 season. Despite making 37 appearances, his total playing time amounted to only 847 minutes. Of his 7 goals, he scored just 1 in La Liga and 1 in the Champions League. The remaining 5 all came in the Copa del Rey, a cup competition where Ancelotti often used his reserve squad to give them a chance. The suffocating nature of those numbers quickly became a hot topic for the media, but Carlo Ancelotti responded with the same old formula. He repeatedly reminded everyone he needs to work harder.
Ahora me habláis de Endrick, que ha jugado poco, que no le he dado minutos, pero hay que pensar que es un jugador muy joven, que tiene que adaptarse, que tiene que mejorar, que tiene que aprender, y meterlo cuando el equipo no está bien, no es que lo voy a ayudar, lo voy a afectar. Entonces todo esto lo tengo que pensar, bla 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 bla.
Before delivering a statement that made the entire Bernabeu raise an eyebrow, Endrick will not become Rodrigo or Vinicius, but he will be a good striker.
Endrick no va a ser Rodrigo y no va a ser Vinicius. Tiene características distintas, pero va a ser un gran delantero. Esto no tengo ninguna duda.
Compliment, but one that sounded no different from a verdict. That decision soon plunged Real Madrid into crisis as they suffered consecutive defeats to Barcelona and AC Milan right at the Bernabeu without scoring a single goal from open play. Ironically, during that difficult period, Endrick and Güler combined for only 1 minute of playing time across 4 consecutive matches. That growing frustration eventually led to a managerial shake-up in the summer of 2025 when Carlo Ancelotti left to make way for Xabi Alonso. However, if you thought a new manager meant a new opportunity for Endrick, you were mistaken. Things actually became even worse. Throughout the first half of the 2025-26 season under Alonso, the Brazilian wonderkid was brought on only 3 times. Not 30, not 13, but exactly 3 times.
Onde está o Endrick? No campo não tá, ele é o único jogador de linha que ainda não entrou em campo na temporada.
Coloca o Endrick pra jogar, poxa. No Real Madrid também, já fez gol decisivo na seleção brasileira. Aí o cara não botar um garoto pra jogar, deve ter alguma coisa contra.
E como há diferentes técnicos reagindo mal ao Endrick, eu acho que deve ter alguma coisa ali de vestiário pro Endrick ficar atento, cara.
É uma teoria, pode ser que tenha alguma coisa. Agora, eu acho que teria que ter algo assim como o presidente, quem contratou, chegar pro Xabi Alonso e falar, cara, deixa eu te falar.
That isolation on the bench created enormous pressure, forcing Endrick to inform Real Madrid that he needed a new destination to save his World Cup dream. Ironically, the person who advised him to leave in search of more playing time was none other than his former mentor Carlo Ancelotti, who by then was sitting in a completely different seat.
First of all, he needs to understand that he has to be patient enough to see how this plays out with Carlo Ancelotti, first and foremost. And second, even if Carlo Ancelotti sticks around, I think he gets more from Ancelotti being there and actually learning and actually growing and evolving as a player than pitching a fit and just walking out.
Well, I think he said that because he loves him. I think he wants to give a warning to Endrick. He wants to teach him something. And when you're 18, you have to be able to listen to that. And if Carlo Ancelotti, we are talking about Carlo Ancelotti. We're not talking about anybody else. We're talking about maybe the best coach in the world right now, even if the results are not there. He's taking a time to talk to you, even if it's publicly. Why he does that? You have to ask the question why he does that. He does that to give you a lesson, to make sure you're going to learn, that you're going to listen and you're going to be better and not do again the same mistake.
That advice quickly became reality in January 2026, when Olympique Lyon officially confirmed the signing of Endrick on loan until the end of the season.
Endrick is not, I don't see him getting any kind of significant minutes for Real Madrid right now. Talented kid, but needs to learn the game. You saw that even in what little you saw of him last season under Carlo Ancelotti. Needs to learn the game, and I think France is as good an opportunity as you could hope for. So he's going into a good team, and the minutes matter. And Lyon have struggled to replace Lacazette, who left at the end of last season. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for him to come into a team that have set themselves a high bar, have a lot to play for, and he'll get time. He'll get the opportunity to learn the game.
That decision to leave marked the beginning of the part that made the entire story more painful than ever, because Endrick did not disappear at all, but instead exploded immediately in France. He scored a hat-trick in the famous 7-goal victory over Metz.
Endrick dans l'axe, il l'a vu, il lui donne le ballon, Endrick 1-0 pour l'Olympique lyonnais. Il va aller défier Jonathan Fischer. Est-ce que c'est un doublé pour Endrick? Oui, un face-à-face, et toujours Endrick face à Fischer. Le triplé pour le Brésilien, ses 3 premiers buts en Ligue 1.
Then he received a red card for playing with too much passion against Nantes. The kind of red card fans often joke belongs to a guy desperate to prove that he deserves more playing time. The peak of his resurgence came with a world-class solo goal that sent Lyon into the Coupe de France quarterfinals, serving as a powerful statement directed back at Madrid. That brilliant form continued all the way until the end of the season with impressive numbers: 8 goals, 8 assists, and the League One Player of the Month award. He had become a completely different player compared to the faded shadow he once was at the Bernabeu.
After his move from Real Madrid on loan with Lyon, the numbers speak for themselves. The way that he is so free, playing liberated, playing like that Endrick that won us over when he was at Palmeiras, operating in those same zones. Endrick is back to what we expected him to be, and he's doing so in Europe.
I love it. The smile is back, the samba is back, and the scoring is back. Perfectly in line with what Carlo Ancelotti apparently had said to him. Move to France, go and get some first team minutes, go and get some goals. And the hat-trick against Metz was, I think, the icing on the cake to identify that he is back in full force and in full confidence right now.
However, this explosive form sparked a paradox that drove the Brazilian fan base crazy. Even while shining brilliantly in France, Endrick continued to be overlooked in national team call-ups. As it turned out, this unfair story was nothing new, because it was still the same name and still the same old script, only the colour of the jersey had changed. From that strange cycle surrounding the young player, fate pushed things even further to the point of absurdity. While Real Madrid was still struggling to find a replacement for Ancelotti, he quietly landed in another seat, that of the head coach of the Brazilian national team.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P.
The irony reached another level when the first player he had to face in his new role was the same former pupil he had left to rot on the bench for 2 years. There is one truth that practically wrote this cruel joke by itself, because the man who advised Endrick to leave Real Madrid in order to save his World Cup hopes was also the one who later held the power to decide who would play in the biggest tournament on the planet. Ancelotti was both the cause of the problem and the only person with the power to solve it. In other words, Endrick ran away from Ancelotti in Madrid, only to run straight into Ancelotti's hands with Brazil. The irony in the relationship between the two turned the 2026 World Cup into a stage for ruthless decisions, beginning on June 12, 2026, in Brazil's opening match against Morocco. With Bruno Guimaraes, Lucas Paqueta, Igor Thiago, and Rafinha starting, the match became extremely difficult, forcing Vinicius Jr. to rescue a 1-1 draw late in the game. While the team struggled desperately for goals, Endrick was forced to remain on the bench for the entire 90 minutes without playing a single second.
No, eu não estou aqui para falar individualmente do jogador. Eu hablo do equipo. O equipo na primeira parte não jogou bem, na segunda parte melhor. Tivemos algumas oportunidades. Temos que acertar mais.
That baffling cold treatment immediately triggered a media storm as the fans' reactions turned into a genuine wave of anger, and ESPN FC devoted an entire show to dissecting the decision. A few days later, during the press conference ahead of the match against Haiti, Ancelotti repeated the familiar line that the team needed to be patient with Endrick and that he would eventually become important.
Para mí, personalmente, Endrick es otra cosa. Es un talento extraordinario. Brasil va a aprovechar de sus calidades en esa Copa del Mundo y también en la próxima Copa del Mundo. Pero él es paciente, no tiene prisa, es muy, como puedo decir, maduro para su edad. Esto es un aspecto muy importante. Y también la familia perto de él es muy paciente. Esto es un aspecto importante para un joven.
The detail that made everyone laugh was when he added that Endrick's family was also very patient, meaning that even his wife and parents had now joined the list of people waiting. Although the legendary Ronaldo, the phenomenon, later defended Ancelotti's decision, insisting that Endrick was ready and that it simply was not his turn yet. For a large section of fans, it sounded like a consolation they had heard far too many times before. On June 19, 2026, Brazil faced Haiti in Philadelphia. Thanks to a brace from Matheus Cunha and another goal from Vinicius Jr., Brazil comfortably led 3-0 after just over the first 45 minutes. In the 64th minute, Ancelotti finally brought Endrick on, officially marking his first appearance at a World Cup. Just a few minutes later, he received the ball inside the box and calmly finished through the legs of the Haitian goalkeeper to find the net.
Here's Ryan, flicking it through to Endrick. Offside flag denies the whole crowd the moment they were waiting.
As the entire Brazilian bench rose to celebrate, the assistant referee suddenly raised the offside flag and the goal was disallowed. You may call it one of football's cruel coincidences, but in Endrick's story, it felt more like a brutal reminder that even when everything finally arrives at the right moment, the universe still finds a way to take it away again. The match ended 3-0, giving Brazil their first 3 points. But Endrick's first World Cup still lacked a single fully recognised moment of glory. After all these setbacks, experts and fans began to split into 2 camps when looking back at the entire story. The first perspective viewed it simply as a matter of fierce competition for places. At Real Madrid, Endrick had to compete with Mbappe, Vinicius and Rodrigo, while with Brazil, he had to battle against Matheus Cunha, Igor, Thiago, Rafinha and even Neymar, who was on his way back. Ancelotti himself explained quite clearly that Cunha played like a deep-line number 10, Igor Thiago was a pure target man, while Endrick was neither one nor the other, a type of player who was difficult to fit directly into an established system. Beyond the tactical explanation, attention began shifting toward a second interpretation, seeing this as a pattern of unusual repeated behaviour. From this point of view, a coach in 2 different environments and with 2 completely different groups of teammates made the exact same decisions regarding the same player, regardless of how consistently that player was scoring elsewhere. You can believe the tactical explanation, but you can also look at how often it has repeated itself and wonder whether Carlo Ancelotti, intentionally or not, has developed a habit of distrusting explosive young talents until they prove themselves over a much longer period than necessary. No one has an absolute answer, but the numbers. 847 minutes at Real Madrid, 3 appearances under Alonso, 90 minutes on the bench in the World Cup opener, and a debut goal erased just hours before this video goes live are saying something very clearly. Because in the end, Endrick has never lacked talent. What he has lacked is something else, the trust of one particular man at 2 different moments in his career. This coming Wednesday, Brazil will face Scotland in the most important match of the group stage. If Endrick once again remains only a backup option, this story will add yet another chapter of frustration. But if Ancelotti truly gives him a start, then for the first time in 2 years, the answer to the question, why does Endrick never play, will finally have a chance to change. If you enjoy our video, don't forget to hit like to help this video reach to other football lovers, and hit the subscribe button to follow for more interesting videos about football stories. See you in the next video.